If some kind of Freaky Friday moment happened and I woke up in 2026 with no money, no investments, and had to start completely from scratch, but I still knew everything I know today, I'd have a massive advantage. When I made my first investment, I didn't have that luxury. I wasted hours researching random stocks, chasing whatever was hyped up, and trying to guess what would take off. It took years to realize that investing doesn't have to be complicated, it just has to be consistent. So if I had to start all over again in 2026, this is exactly how I'd start, step by step, to build wealth faster and with less stress. So picture this, it's the start of a new year and you finally managed to set aside $1,200. You could save it or you could invest it. But which one actually moves you forward? Let's look at the numbers. Inflation in the US averaged around 2.7% in 2025 and is projected to hover around 3% in 2026. This means that the cost of everything from rent and groceries to your morning coffee is slowly climbing. If you spend $3,400 a month in 2026, a 3% inflation rate means that your expenses could rise to about $3,500 by next year. It's not that dramatic month to month, but it does add up. Now say that you're old school and you decide to stash away $1,200 in cash. The $4 coffee you buy in January might cost $4.12 by December, but the $1,200 in your piggy bank will still only be $1,200. So in reality, you're actually losing money. However, if you keep your money in the bank, you could put it into a high-yield savings account, which right now offers between 3, 4, or 5% of interest. This would turn your $1,200 into roughly $1,254 after a year. That's better, especially because it keeps you ahead of inflation, so you won't feel the impact of the higher coffee prices in December. But it's still not going to help if you want to build wealth. You see, when you save, the bank pays you interest because it uses your money to lend to others. However, when you invest, you become a part owner of a business that's trying to grow, and you earn returns when that business succeeds. So take Apple, for example. If you bought one share of Apple back in 2010 for about $10, the same share would be worth over $200 today, not even counting the dividends. That's a 20x increase that long-term investing can do that saving simply can't. When a company grows to a certain size and wants to expand, it lists on a stock exchange like the NASDAQ or NYSE. So anyone can invest, teachers like myself, doctors, students, and regular people like you and me. So if I had $1,200, I would actually choose to invest it. Because unlike a savings account that might earn you 4 to 5% a year, the stock market has historically returned about 7 to 10% annually over the long term, even accounting for market ups and downs. So saving keeps your money safe from inflation, but investing helps you take your finances to the next level. Now, investing works when you put your money into companies that actually perform well. If we go back to Apple, we all know how quickly it grew through the 2000s. And as the company succeeded, its investors did too. But not every company has that same story. Another smartphone brand from the same era was Palm. They tried to sell small companion phones that would pair with regular smartphones, a concept that sounded smart at the time. Even big names like Bono from YouTube believed in the idea and invested $460 million into the company. But Palm struggled to stand out against Apple and Samsung. By 2010, the company was sold to HP for just about $1.2 billion, which was a fraction of what early investors had hoped for, and within a few years, the brand completely just disappeared. When I first started investing, I spent hours studying new companies, watching endless videos, and following every business headline I could find. I thought I was being super smart, but I was really just making things harder and more risky than they needed to be. You see, if you put all of your money into one company and it fails, you basically lose everything. That's exactly what I realized when I discovered index funds and exchange-traded funds, or ETFs. An ETF is built by an investment company like Vanguard or Schwab, and it includes shares from many different companies. For example, SPYM, or formerly known as SPLG, is an ETF that tracks the S&P 500, which is made up of the 500 largest publicly traded companies in the United States like Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon. When you invest in an ETF, two important things happen. First, you actually lower your risk because you're not relying on one single company to perform well. Second, you save time because you don't need to constantly research or monitor individual stocks. Some of the most popular ETFs include VOO, SPY, IVV, and QQQ. If I were just starting out, it's usually best to just stick with an index that tracks something like the S&P 500 because it gives you exposure to a wide mix of stable, well-established companies that have historically delivered steady, long-term growth. So if I were to make my first investment today, I would definitely be investing in an ETF, probably SPY SPYM or QQQM, because I like how it focuses on innovative tech companies in the NASDAQ 100. And honestly, if this all feels overwhelming, it's totally okay. You can join my next beginner's investing masterclass. I'm going to walk through everything with you step by step to help you make your first investment as a complete beginner. I'll leave the link down below if you want to join the class today or tomorrow. Now, once you know that you want to invest and you've decided what to invest in, the next question is when to start and how much to actually put in. You see, anyone can really invest, but there are two situations where I'd hold off before encouraging someone to actually jump into the stock market. The first is high interest debt. Let's say that you paid for your wedding on a credit card and now owe $5,000 at an interest rate of 23%. Every month, you're paying back part of that $5,000, but you're also paying another $95 in interest, which is basically having a fee for having borrowed that money in the first place. Now, that fee doesn't go away until you fully pay off that debt, and the longer you carry it, the more it slows you down. So if you have an extra $1,200 sitting around after your usual repayments, I add it to my debt repayment instead of investing it. To me, debt is like having a slow puncture in your car tire when you're trying to drive home from the holidays. You can keep stopping to pump it up, but it's going to keep leaking, drag you down, and you might never arrive in time for the festivities. The second thing is not having an emergency fund. When you invest, you typically want to leave your money untouched for at least 5 or 10 years or even longer if you can. So if your laptop suddenly dies and you need $800 to replace it, or you get into a car accident and you need to pay for physical therapy out of pocket, you don't want to pull that out from your investments. And that's exactly what an emergency fund is for. For my community, I usually say that they generally want to have at least 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses sitting in a high yield savings account, so your money keeps pace with inflation but remains easy to withdraw when you need it. When you sell investments, it can take a couple of days for the cash to clear, and more importantly, you lose the benefit of long-term growth each time you dip into it. So before you start investing, make sure that you've done two things. First, paid off any high interest debt, and second, built an emergency fund that covers at least 3 to 6 months of expenses. Once that's done, I believe that you're ready to get started. Now, you don't need $1,200 before you can make your first investment, or even say $500 or maybe even $100. Many platforms let you start with as little as $1. But it's important to understand that the more that you put in, the more that you'll actually get out. If you invested $1 a month for 40 years and earn an average annual return of 10%, you'd end up with about $5,300. Increase that to $10 a month and it grows to about $53,000. And if you can invest $1,000 a month, that's roughly $5.3 million. So if I only had $1 to invest right now, I get started. And as my income grows, I'll add more to say $2, $3, then $10. And before long, my investments will grow exponentially. So with all that background, you now know everything you need to make your first investment. So if I were to start all over again, the first thing that I would do is open a brokerage account, which is basically the platform that allows you to buy and sell investments like ETFs, stocks, and bonds. Now, if you decide to invest in something like an ETF, just know that each ETF charges a small annual fee for managing your investments. This is known as the expense ratio. And basically, when you have this ETF, you'll have to pay a percentage of the total amount that you have actually invested. For example, if you invest $1,200 a month, that adds up to $14,400 over a year. If your ETF charges a 0.05% expense ratio, you'd only have to pay about $7.20 in fees for that year. But if it charged 1%, then you'd be paying around $144 instead. And this difference in expense ratios actually compounds a lot over time. So for me and my personal rule, I usually choose expense ratios under 0.5%. Anything higher than 0.5%, for me, I think it's just way too high. I would stay away from them. Now, there are a lot of funds that have low expense ratios like QQQM, SPYM, and FZROX, which actually has a 0 expense ratio. So for today, I'm going to show you how to make your first investment through Fidelity, which is the brokerage that I personally use. First, I'll start by typing Fidelity into my browser, clicking through their website and selecting Open an Account. From there, I'll fill in my personal details such as my name, address, social security number, and contact info. Brokerages collect this information because they're required by law to verify your identity and report your investment income to the IRS for tax purposes. Now, once that's done, I'll choose what kind of account I want to open. There are two main types most beginners look at: a Roth IRA or a regular taxable brokerage account. For a Roth IRA, IRA just basically stands for an individual retirement account. You can contribute money into it, let it grow tax-free, and when you withdraw later at 59.5, all of that money is going to be tax and penalty free. And as I'm recording this right now and it's not actually confirmed, for 2026, the IRA contribution limit steps up to $7,500 for people under 50, and if you're older than 50, that goes up to $8,600 $600 a year. Again, these numbers might change, but it's always a good idea to check yourself on irs.gov. Now, the second account is a taxable brokerage account. With this account, there is no contribution limits and you can withdraw your money at any time. The only downside to this account is, well, it's built within the name that you actually have to pay taxes on any profits or dividends that you earn. So for this video, I'm going to open a Roth IRA because it's a great way to take advantage for long-term tax-free growth. Now that the account is open, I'll move over to the dashboard and click on transfer so I can link my bank account and deposit the money I want to invest. You can kind of think of the Roth IRA as your shopping cart and the ETFs you buy as the items that you're putting inside of it. Once the money's in, I'll go to the quote section and search for the ETF I want to invest in. Today, I'm going to choose SPLG, which is now renamed to SPYM, and it's trading at around $80 per share. If I'm using a Roth IRA, I'm limited by an annual contribution, so I might invest only $1,000 this month. But just to keep things simple, I'll just say that I want to invest in one share of SPLG or SPYM. Next, I'll click buy under action and choose market order as my order type. A market order just means that I'm buying it at the current price, so it'll go through immediately. You can also use a limit order if you only want to buy if the price drops to a certain point. But for long-term investors, a market order works perfectly fine. Finally, I'll make sure that everything looks okay, then I'll hit submit. And really, that's it. I just made my first investment in less than 5 minutes, which means that you can pretty much do the same exact thing too. Now that I made my first investment, and hopefully you have too, there are a few simple strategies that I want to leave you with. First, with all of the students that I work with, I usually have them automate their investing. You probably heard people say, pay yourself first, and that's exactly what this means. You can kind of think of yourself as a small business. You earn income, you pay your bills, and you need to pay your employees, which in this case, it's you. Adding money to your investment is your salary for your future self. And just like you never skip paying your employees, you don't want to skip investing either. The easiest way to make sure that it actually happens is to automate it. You can choose a comfortable amount and set it as a recurring debit order. This way you don't have to think about it or rely on your willpower. You'll just know that every month you're paying yourself and steadily building wealth. Second, and this is a big thing for all beginner investors, you want to avoid selling when the market dips. So let me show you what I mean. If you invested in something like IVV, your portfolio would have grown nicely until 2020 when the pandemic hit. Here on the graph, you can see how that big drop just suddenly happened. And in moments like this, it's easy to panic and sell, thinking that you're protecting yourself from bigger losses. But if you'd sold, you would have missed the rebound that followed. Within a couple of years, markets had not only recovered, but also reached a new all-time high. In my experience, it's far more profitable to stay invested through the ups and the downs. Most well-known ETFs trend upwards over time because they hold hundreds of companies. And when one struggles, others balance it out until it recovers. And finally, don't try to time the market. There's this old Seinfeld episode where George Costanza, known for coming up with these elaborate schemes, decides to do the opposite of all of his instincts. And suddenly, everything in his life starts going right. Investors turn that into what they jokingly call the Costanza strategy. When people try doing the opposite of their gut feeling, like buying when stocks were high instead of waiting for them to drop, they found that even the so-called worst timing often led to strong long-term results. So the lesson here isn't to buy high or low, it's to keep buying consistently no matter what the headlines say. Because the truth is, no one can predict the market. The only thing that you can control is how consistent you are with investing. If you follow everything I've shown you today, you'll start investing earlier and more effectively than I've ever did. And honestly, if I could hit redo, I would invest far more aggressively from the start. But since I can't, I'm glad to share what I've learned and hopefully save you a few years of trial and error. And if you're ready to take the next big step with investing, I highly encourage you to join my next beginner's investing class here.